Before I get started with this video, Yume Nikki is a game best experienced on your own first. It's a game of exploration and journey, and this video includes almost everything there is to see in the game. So before I continue, I heavily suggest going and playing the game for yourself if you're able to. It's completely free on Steam, so if you have a PC, there's nothing stopping you from going and playing it yourself first. And also, I fucking mean it when it says flashing light warning. There's some sections in this game which are some of the trippiest things I've ever fucking seen. So if you suffer from any kind of seizures or eye strain, that's your fucking ticket to click off. But with that all out of the way, let's get into this. Sleeping is something that is vital for the human body. We all have to do it eventually, whether you like it or not. Sleep is what allows our mind and body to rest and heal after whatever amount of goofing you've been doing all day. It's said that we spend about a third of our lives asleep, and a lot of that time is what our body uses to grow, and if you're sick, fight off any kind of infection or illnesses. Which is why I'm stuck at good old 5'3" and get sick like every other week. Sleep is just as important as eating or drinking, however it doesn't come without its bag of negative side effects. As well as too little sleep or sleep deprivation, having too much sleep or oversleeping can lead to a large variety of issues in and of itself. And external effects such as insomnia, sleep apnea, narcolepsy, and restless leg syndrome can all cause disruptions to your sleep schedule. Getting to sleep can be a hard task on its own for a lot of people, and it oftentimes doesn't even end there. Dreams are our mind's way of processing the day that we've just had, or just a combination of what we've been thinking about recently. They usually last about 5 to 20 minutes, however it's possible for people to perceive them as living an entire lifetime or having entire backstories. The process itself is titled REM sleep, standing for rapid eye movement, because at this stage that's what's most noticeable from an outside perspective. This usually lasts for about 2 hours, or generally 25% of your overall sleep time. However, this can depend on a large variety of different issues, like once again insomnia or depression. Some people believe that dreams have meanings attached to them. This process is titled dream interpretation. Somebody who studies or interprets dreams can also be called an oneurologist. And connected to this, there's an entire line of therapy dedicated to interpreting what your dreams might mean in terms of your current situation. But it's safe to say that there is a lot of room for discussion when it comes to dreams, and of course by extension, nightmares. Nightmares and night terrors are a subset of dreams that are associated with fear, anxiety, and most times will end up waking you up out of REM sleep in a very jarring way. They can be about absolutely anything that troubles you, scares you, and funnily enough, whatever keeps you up at night. They're most common in children, especially with night terrors. Night terrors are usually only found within the ages of 3 to 8 years, however they can stay with you due to certain types of trauma like PTSD. They can also be referred to as sleep terrors and is a specific form of parasomnia, disruptive behavior that affects your sleep without actually waking you up most of the time. This is within the same group as sleepwalking, sleep talking, and of course, sleep paralysis. Oftentimes, it will be that the mind is still in the nightmare and yet the body is awake, usually screaming, crying, or mumbling, all while not actually being fully awake. And a lot of the times in the end, unlike nightmares, the person affected won't even remember it happening as they weren't even awake for it. Much like with sleepwalking, it's heavily encouraged not to wake the person up as it could both prolong the effects or they could mistake you for what is going on in their mind and harm you. And coming from someone who has been affected by nightmares and parasomnia in its varying forms for nearly all of my life now, it's safe for me to say that sleep combined with both dreams and nightmares are a very great topic to use in the horror genre. Leading us to the game that we're going to be talking about today. Yume Nikki is an RPG horror title created by Kikiyama, an extremely mysterious developer. It was originally uploaded back on the 26th of June, 2004. It's been updated a couple of times since then, however our last update occurred back on the 10th of February 2012, before being translated to English a few months later and uploaded to both Steam and iOS in both 2018 and 2019 respectively. It's absolutely no new knowledge that is the cause for a lot of inspiration in many different genres. Undertale, Doki Doki, Lisa the Painful, One Shot, all games that have been inspired by Yume Nikki. But for those who are new, what is Yume Nikki? Yume Nikki is a game based around this girl, Midotsuki, and her journey through her own little dream world. Our task isn't explicitly stated, and the general vibe of the game is to just explore and enjoy the scenery. However, there is an ending to the game. Oh boy, is there an ending to the game. As we travel, we'll run into different effects, which will alter the way that we can interact with things. Certain events may occur, and we'll meet some interesting looking characters along the way. But of course, as always, it's better if we just go ahead and experience it. Opening up the game, we're given a brief tutorial of the game's control scheme. Namely that in order to get to the dream world, we have to go and sleep in the bed. To get out, we pinch our cheek by pressing 9. Enter to interact in order to gain new effects, which we can mess around with in our menu. And that we can get rid of these effects in the room of doors by pressing 5. And, of course, that we can save at the desk in our real world room at any time. Which is actually the only location throughout the game to actually exist. Everything that you'll be seeing past our real world bedroom is just us dreaming. Getting a look at the bedroom itself, we're able to interact with a few objects. First being the door, which we're unable to go through, and upon interacting with it, Midotsky will just shake her head. For whatever reason, she doesn't want to go out. The wiki page for the room itself states that it could possibly be due to her being a hikikomori. For those unaware of what a hikikomori is described as a person who chooses to avoid social interactions, some going as extreme to simply never leave their rooms in a form of social confinement. The phenomenon is usually started by some kind of illness or situations such as social anxiety, depression, bullying, or even just a severe societal pressure that Japan has, where over time the person affected gets used to staying inside and deems that it's just better to stay inside than go outside and face whatever external factor is affecting them. Next to the door we can find a TV. After turning it on, the screen will begin to flicker and we can't access any of the channels. However, next to it we can interact with a console to play a small game named Nasu, where we play as a little guy eating eggplants falling out of the sky. The game resembles that of an NES, Famicom console. Occasionally these bonus eggplants will show up, which give you a higher score if you catch them, and will have an even higher chance of showing up if you perform a code very similar to the Konami code in the main menu. That being left, left, right, right, up, down, up, down. After doing so, the player's head will turn into an eggplant, and like stated, these bonus eggplants will appear more often. It can also be interpreted that since Nasu's appearance is so bright red and that it's one of the only things in this real world segment that we're able to actually interact with, that this may have some effect on the dream world that we'll be seeing soon. Certain characters and segments that we'll be seeing bear small resemblances to Nasu's protagonist and the general bright red appearance of the game. However, moving on, we can interact with the desk in order to save our game and hear this calm little music box tone. I'll be bringing it up throughout multiple parts of the video, but Yume Nikki's soundtrack has to be one of the most influential parts of the game for me. Whilst playing the game for the first time, I was hearing tracks I had heard many times before without even knowing that it came from Yume Nikki. The tracks are so characterized and fitting for the game and its various worlds that I'd have to put it either in my top 5 or at the very least in my top 10 tracks of all time. It's just such a charming little soundtrack. And before we interact with the bed to go to sleep, we can actually go and visit our balcony, and depending on the time of day, we can see the background change. However, there isn't really anything for us to interact with out here, and before we head back in, we can just take a note of, even with the colored pink walls, the environment of this outside balcony just seems very mellow and grim. Everything that isn't the wall is colored in these dirtied up beige off-white tones that makes it seem like the environment isn't that well looked for, and the whole thing is just covered in ventilation and air conditioning units. And one last thing of note before we do go to sleep is that anytime we wake up, there is a 1 in 64 chance for Midotsky to wake up with a crick in the neck. If this happens, she'll be stuck looking off to the left and won't be able to interact with Nasu or the desk, and her only option is to go back to sleep. Which is what we'll be doing now. Entering the dream world, we are taken to the dream world version of Midotsky's balcony, with a new set of backgrounds to accompany it. Entering our bedroom, it appears to be almost identical apart from a few small differences. The first being that our console is gone, and now if we turn on the TV, we are presented with an eye staring back at us. There's also a 1 in 8 chance of it showing the Kalimba channel instead. This is a reference to Kikiyama's work before Yume Nikki. Before making Yume Nikki, Kikiyama would sometimes post tracks to a now defunct Japanese music sharing platform, where they posted the track Kalimba. This is Yume Nikki's counterpart and is very similar to the original, but with a few instrumental changes. As well as this, instead of being able to save our game, if we interact with the desk, we are now able to scoot around on the chair. We can go anywhere whilst on this chair, however cannot get off unless we bring it back to the desk. There's also a 1 in 5 chance that sleeping in our bed will bring us to a place titled the Staircase of Hands. However, I'll get back to that location later on. And of course, our final difference is that we can actually exit through the door this time to get to the Nexus. In the Nexus, we are presented with 12 doors, each one leading to their own distinct world filled with unique characters, environments, and of course, effects. Effects are our main focus point throughout the game, and as we'll explore the world, we can gain a total of 24 different effects, each causing their own unique and wacky effect on Midotsky, and some of which are even vital to getting to certain areas of the game. Because yes, in each world there are even more sublevels that we'll be getting to as I talk about each world. These worlds are normally accessed through some other kind of door in the game, or from interacting with certain entities. Some of them I'll be leaving to their own separate section at the end of the game, due to them either being really big, or they're connected to a lot of areas, or they're just generally significant. And I'll get to those after I've finished with the main 12. While we explore these worlds, we can come across what are titled as events, little interactables or certain odd chances that cause these notable events to happen. I'll just be going over these as they normally would happen. But for now, let's get into our first world. Entering the first door, we can go into Forest World. Upon entering the forest, the general vibe of the world is dark and suspenseful. We seem to be within the depths of a coniferous forest, which, fun fact for you tree nerds, they're my favorite tree type. I'm forever the world's one and only #1 Douglas fir lover. The world itself, a lot like the other worlds that we'll be coming across, is classed as a looping world, meaning that you can just continue in one direction and eventually you'll end up back in the same place. In the background for the world, a parallax image of this funky looking red dude named the Aztec Rave Monkey, who is seemingly forever staring into our soul. It gives the environment this feeling that we're being watched here, and while I wouldn't say that Yume Nikki is a directly terrifying game, there are places like the Forest World where the whole environment is just kind of vaguely unsettling. Wandering around this implied infinitely looping forest, all while being watched by this looming figure and the various frog quote-unquote NPCs that surround the environment, just feels weird to me. And I say quote-unquote cause does this look like a frog to you? I mean, they are mostly referred to as Namakuji, which just means slug, because that's a much more fitting title. If we choose to interact with either of them, their essence will stay with us, following us around with this wavy, faded effect. They aren't affected by any of our effects, as they are built into the actual tile set of the world. The track for the forest continues to build upon this theme of suspense and unnerve, with this empty track only consisting of differing bell chimes. The forest is definitely empty and devoid of any kind of life other than these frogs, and the track definitely represents that well. While here we are able to find an actual frog, interacting with it will give us the frog effect. There is another frog in the section titled The Dense Woods who will do the same thing, however I'll get back to that later on. The frog effect allows us to become a frog. Our head changes into one of a frog, and we get this more hunched back. With the effect active, we will walk at a regular pace in water rather than being slowed down by it, and we're able to hop in place like a frog. For a lot of the main 12 worlds, there are no events, present. It's normally in the sub-levels that we'll be able to find some more events. And our only way forward is through these 2 pillars in the northeast part of the woods, to travel into the Face Carpet Plaza. The Face Carpet Plaza is a small location covered in darkness and pink and green carpets resembling animal faces. They make noise when stepped on, and the whole area is enclosed by these wall of spikes. In the surrounding area, we can find both a singular lunatic Torinagan, a group of owl-like NPCs which can be either found in this crazed state, where if caught will take Midotsky to these enclosed areas she can't escape from, or in this calmer state where they'll just kind of walk about. And Nenrikido, red blocks that will transport Midotsky in and out of an area titled Hell that we'll get to later on. However, apart from that, the beat for the area is this constant rhythmic thumping which kind of instinctualizes the feeling of needing to run immediately as to not get caught by the Torinagan. And our only way out of here is to either go into Hell or return back to the Nexus. So let's do that. Stepping into Block World, we can find the world to be extremely repetitive. The blocky landscape is made to give off the illusion of a 3D space rather than RPG Maker's usual top-down tileset design, which can make it somewhat hard to navigate. Blocks ranging in colors of white, pinks, and purples can be seen floating around in this seemingly empty void in various arrangements, with a different version of the Aztec rave monkey in the background this time. While here, the only thing that we can come across as any form of life is Mafuriko, an invisible character which we can only see the hat and scarf of until using the stoplight effect, which we'll be getting later on, which reveals the rest of her character to be a girl. By interacting with her, we can teleport to different parts of the world, giving us access to areas that otherwise we wouldn't be able to get to. It can be interpreted that Mafuriko is a representation of Madotsuki's social confinement, choosing to stay in this empty world, possibly even becoming invisible on their own accord due to it only wearing off once unable to do anything at all because of the stoplight effect. Funnily enough, when interacting with her normally, she will not teleport back with you and will instead choose to stay at that east part of Block World, forcing you to go and look for her again in order to teleport again. However, if you're using the snowman effect, another one which we'll get to later, she will instead teleport with you, showing that maybe she feels more comfortable with the snowman than another human being. The music for the section is just as repetitive as the world around it is, echoing these same few chimes over and over again in an echoey void, which fits pretty well for the endless empty blocky landscape. While here, you may discover a bed, much like the bed in Madotsuki's dream version of her bedroom. There is a 1 in 5 chance of this bed also sending you to the Staircase of Hands. Throughout the dream world, there are 5 beds that all share this tray, and one is randomly selected each time Madotsuki goes to sleep. We may also find this abandoned hat and scarf on the floor. By interacting with it, we gain the hat and scarf effect, which allows us to turn into a snowman if it is currently snowing. And finally, we can find a male restroom. There are 2 restrooms in the whole game, a male restroom in Block World and a female restroom in Graffiti World. Regardless of which one you are at, Madotsuki is able to enter either one, no problem, and they don't do anything apart from making a flushing sound before Madotsuki exits. This has caused a couple of theories to whether or not Madotsuki may be non-binary or possibly is transgender, and her being able to go into either room is just memories from before and after transitioning. Other sections of the game, such as certain character designs and a specific variation of Madotsuki titled as Closet Madotsuki, may also hint at this being a possibility. Or at least, hinting at something similar. There are once again no events in this world, however for connections we're able to enter the White Desert, a location that I'm saving for its own segment, by traveling this door here using Mafuriko to teleport you to it. And once again of course there's a 1 in 5 chance of being taken to the Staircase of Hands. We can also get here by a hole in the hedges of Windmill World, but apart from that, it's time to head to our next world. If Block World was dark, then Puddle World is even darker. A small void only littered by these small street lamps and puddles reflecting the dark sky above, one which we can't actually see ourselves otherwise. The land is completely empty and void as there isn't a single soul in sight. We are completely alone here. Due to this, it's hard to keep any form of direction here, and it's very easy to get lost, with the only notable parts of the world being the street lamps which you can interact with to turn them on and off. We can also find an umbrella here which will grant us the umbrella effect, which, as the name states, allows us to pull out an umbrella. After which, it will begin to rain until we go back to our normal form, allowing us to use multiple effects whilst this rain is present. The music track is slow and droning, giving the area a slight unease. Even if we know that nothing is here to harm us, things still don't feel right here. And, unsurprisingly, there's no events to be found here. And entering the Pink Tunnel, we're able to enter into the dense woods. Or at least, a part of the dense woods. The dense woods is an area resembling Forest World. We exit out of the Pink Tunnel to a vending machine and another street lamp. There are multiple ways of getting to the dense woods, however, this is the only way to get to Dense Woods A, a split area from Dense Woods B. The track for Dense Woods A feels almost alarming in a way. The cut from Puddle World's track to this sharp-feeling Dense Woods A track feels like getting lost in a forest at night. While there's never anything here to hurt us, the knowledge of what could possibly be watching us from the trees is still a paranoia-inducing thought. It is raining here, which means that if we equip and unequip the umbrella effect, we can actually stop the rain. In order to get out of the area, we can travel down onto the road. From this point on, we can either travel to the left or the right until a path up appears. Going through the path, we can find it to be a looping area that will eventually lead us back to the road. But while here, we can come across this strange object next to a street lamp. Interacting with it doesn't seem to do anything, and the object is seemingly purposeless. at least from what I know of. Coming back down to the road, we can continue to the right until we find a jellyfish. Interacting with it, it will make a small noise. We can then travel off-screen and onto the infinite road. Like the name states, the road is in fact infinite, and no matter how far we go to the right, the road will never end. In the background, we can find groups of Floyags. However, it's important that we pass this group of oddly shaped creatures at least 5 times before turning around and going to the left. Doing so, we're able to find a singular green variation of these creatures before entering Dense Woods B. In this area, there are 3 sections that we'll be able to access depending on where we entered the world from. However, for now, we're just able to enter this one section. I'll be coming back to the other 2 paths later on. Coming out of the infinite road, we're able to travel east and find the dead body of Chitai-sen. They're surrounded by traffic cones, and upon interacting with them, we're able to access the stoplight effect. One which turns Midotsky into a traffic light and can be used to stop NPCs, and in some case may even change their whole appearance. Traveling up off of the road, we can find a manhole, and whether this manhole is open or not depends on how many times you pass by those group of Floyags. If you pass them under 5 times, the hole will not be open. Entering the hole, we're greeted by a very unnerving sight. This is Rory Straw, the thing that lives under the manhole. And if you pass the Floyags 10 times instead of just the original 5 to open up the manhole, then they even gain this alternative appearance. To me personally, this original appearance is one of the freakiest things in the game so far, and for a small fun fact, the name Rory Straw was given to it by fans from the Moshi Monsters character Rory Scroll, which is Moshi Monsters still around? Oh. But either way, while here, we can either use the left straw, tendril worm thing to go back to the forest, or to the one on the right and enter the White Desert. Or at least, a confined space in the White Desert, where we can find this weird creature with a shaky jaw, known as just the thing with the quivering jaw. However, we'll be coming back to this area later on, and for now, it's time to head back to the Nexus. Continuing with the streak of darkness given by its name, the Dark World is the darkest location that we'll be seeing today, and we can't actually see anything at all in here. In order to make our way around here, we have to use the lamp effect, found in, you guessed it, Lamp World. Using the effect, we're able to find these intricately detailed patterns on the floor, once again bringing in those Aztec Mesoamerican themes and art styles. The area is large and looping, meaning that it's extremely easy to get lost here, especially with the dark environment. The music is oddly calming, however. Unlike a lot of the other tracks in the game, the darkest location we'll be coming across has this tame and relaxing tone to it. Ominous albeit, but calm. While here, we can run into the knife effect by finding a knife on the floor in the middle of these 2 hand-shaped patterns, and it'll be one of the more useful effects we'll pick up on our journey. We can swap the knife in between hands and of course stab certain entities with it. NPCs that move about will go faster as if to run away, however those that are stationary will instead just animate faster like they're in a panic. There aren't any events that occur here, however we can find free Piscini, which in this world are barely noticeable due to them just being these dark purple blobby creatures which are only really noticeable due to their eyes. There's also this ghost named Folony who will consistently follow Midotsky throughout the entire world. It's speculated that it does this since Midotsky will most likely be running around as a lamp, being the most noticeable thing in the world and by extension drawing the attention of Folony. Its name is also a play on words for follow and felony since it's a felony to stalk someone. And unlike the other 2 ghosts that we'll be seeing, it actually doesn't give us any effect at all when interacted with. Towards the middle of the world, we can find this pale white gate which once walked through will send us to a location titled the Wilderness. The Wilderness is a large deserted location filled to the brim with these strange plants that make it hard to navigate, and it's also the largest section in the game.
But Wolfram, if it's the largest, why doesn't it get its own section?
Unlike the other worlds that I've chosen to give their own section to, the wilderness consists of a whole lot of traveling between different compass points. Even through the whole thing itself, it just mostly consists of being the wilderness. And unlike the other sections where they lead off into really integral parts of the story, or have branching pathways, or involve going to a lot of different locations, a lot of the wilderness just exists inside of itself and is pretty contained, and I make the fucking script. I make the script, I can make it how I want. The music that plays here is just the music from Madotsuki's dream bedroom, but slowed down. The whole world is split between a few sectors, the east and west, northern and infinite wilderness areas. Starting off with the infinite area, it's the only section that actually loops on itself like in a couple of worlds that we've seen before. And it's here that we can find the towel effect from this Itten moment, named after a yokai of the same name and shares its resemblance. With the effect, we can wrap ourselves up in a towel and... Wait, that's it? Madotsuki will sneeze using the interaction button, however it's never used for anything. Moving on then. Using the lamp effect, we're able to see inside of the hot spring house where it is the NPC Onsen-san lives. They can be found drinking from the hot spring water, and if we choose to stab them, they will actually change coloration in the head and will stop drinking from the water. We can arrive here from the western area through what is titled Route 3, and our only way of returning is through this large patch of plants. However, traveling north through this symmetrical patch of plants will instead lead us up into the northern area of the wilderness. In this separate section, we can find these entities called Batsus, which resemble the plants that we can see throughout the world. If stabbed, they'll just scream before disappearing, a common pattern with a lot of the NPCs. They don't move about and will instead just wiggle around in place. Here we can also find a location titled the Stairway to the Sky, however before we go up it, I want to quickly go over to the west and east area where we can find both a group of Teninigan having a party, which is actually our first event to be talked about. The Teninigan just kind of dance about to this upbeat music. They seem to be having a good time. We, however, are trapped behind some plants and we can't go and join them. And off to the east, we can find a rave box, which once interacted with will show us the Aztec rave monkey alongside this synth track. In the east, we can find this passageway into a location titled the Barrack Settlement, also titled as the Ghost Town by fans of the game, or the Shanty Village by the English translation soundtrack, which, speaking of, has to be one of the more well-known tracks in the game. I'd been hearing this track for the longest time and never knew where it originated from. You learn something new every day. The area is nothing short from depressing. The area has this melancholy feel to it with these dingy-looking houses littering around the place, all identical to each other. These entities, called Perori, can be found around here, and it's believed that this is a kind of hometown for them. They are also randomized to send you to the FC world, which I'll be talking about later on. When interacted with, they also make these little chiming noises. I think these guys are kinda cute, and it isn't gonna be the last time that we see them. Out of all of the buildings here, only 2 can be entered, the first of which containing another entity just called the Seahorse, surrounded by a bunch of coral, and the second housing a long path in between buildings where the windows have now been replaced by ices. Another entity resembling an eye, which will follow the player as they move about the screen. These entities could possibly be interpreted as Madotsuki feeling as she's always being watched in the outside world. At the end of this path, we can find another entrance to Mural World, another one of the main 12 worlds. Finally, coming back to that staircase, we're able to begin our ascent. Well, that's definitely not foreshadowing for anything. The Falling Man event will occur out of random chance and even has a chance for 2 to show up at once. Getting to the top, we're introduced to the Sky Garden. A small area resembling some kind of park, the area is lit up by these small lamps, and for the first time in the game, the area feels non-threatening. Not ominous, not unnerving, it's just a genuinely calm area. We can find a few entities around the area, the first being Organoid. Organoid is this little blue guy that will walk around the garden and if touched will teleport away. which can be a bit of a hassle as we get 100 yen for stabbing him. Towards the cliff on the eastmost part of the garden, we can find 3 mouse bros who will sit and watch the passing UFOs. We can use various effects to mess with them and move them around, however, they will always return back to the cliff. And I personally just really like the visual of this area. However, we can't stay here and we have to continue through this building titled the Crossover Garden. If we do it whilst holding a white lily, we can go into the Ghost World, a location that is definitely the grimiest we've seen so far. It's a vast expanse covered in random blocks of decayed concrete, and the track that comes with it continues to add to that droning feeling of dread that's present here. Everything here feels like complete and utter isolation, and directly after our first moment of peace too. Making it even more disconnected to what we were just experiencing, we can find a few ghosts floating about. The only one that is currently important to us though is this one called Fleeby, which while looking similar to Felony will instead actually give us an effect this time, being in the form of the triangular handkerchief. Here, Midotsky will wear the handkerchief as a tiara, this being a symbol of death in Japanese culture. In this form, Midotsky becomes invisible to NPCs, meaning that it's a lot easier to evade entities such as the lunatic Turnigan. The whole area just feels kind of dead. I mean, it is the Ghost World after all. But even down to the use of white lilies to get here, which is another symbol for death, being the flower often used to represent death or is used at funerals. And just the general dread and sorrow feeling that the location has. I think it's about time that we head back to the Nexus. Coming into what is my personal favourite world, we enter the Snow World, a large expanse of snowy forest, once again being the same type of coniferous trees that we saw in Forest World, but now in this taiga environment. Snow is constantly falling, and every now and then we can find these igloos scattered about. The music track for Snow World is possibly my favourite in the whole game. Everything just encapsulates that feeling of waking up to realising it snowed overnight. It's just really calming and nice to listen to, which makes it stand out a lot more from the vaguely ominous tracks that the rest of the game has. The bell chimes that we hear throughout the track are also the same sound effect used for the jellyfish. Travelling down to the bottom rightmost igloo in this cluster, we can go inside, where we can find a sleeping girl named Kamakuriko. She has similar reactions to the rest of the entities, however will only make a noticeable reaction to the cat effect, which we'll be grabbing later on, in which she will put her head down and start shaking, possibly noting to some kind of fear of cats. Some people believe that Kamakuriko might be a younger version of Midotsky due to their similarities once they've sat down next to each other, and could possibly be hinting at some kind of self-awareness on Midotsky's end. In this snowy world where there isn't really much to do and it'd be really cold and it's better to just stay inside, sleeping it all away would be a viable option, much like Midotsky with her own reality. Or she just could be a reminder to Midotsky that she is still in fact asleep. Traveling south, we can come across a sane Turnigan next to another igloo. If we go inside, we can find there to be nothing there. However, if we stab the Turnigan before entering, we can find another lunatic Turnigan to be waiting for us on the inside now. Traveling to the east from the Turnigan, we can find a Yukiona, resembling the snow woman folklore of the same name. By interacting with her, we can gain the Yukiona effect, which works similarly to the umbrella effect, except this time snow instead of rain. Continuing east, we can find another igloo, this one containing a portal to the Pink Sea. However, before we head through, we can travel to the north and find another one of those 5 beds that will send us to the Staircase of Hands. Walking into the igloo that contains the portal to the Pink Sea, we can simply interact with the pink pool in order to be sent to the Pink Sea. The Pink Sea is, as described by its name, a pink area covered in pale pink islands and a pastel pink sea. There isn't much to see here besides from the land and the water until we run across these 2 structures and a floating pink balloon. Interacting with it, we are transported to a blue balloon in the middle of the water, which will slow us down, requiring us to use the frog effect to travel at our normal pace. Once we find this green balloon, however, we're able to interact with it once again to end up on the southeastmost island covered in these pinky purple cones. This is Puniko's house, and of course she doesn't speak or give us any kind of interaction. The room looks somewhat similar to Midotsky's, and just like Midotsky, she is the only resident here, living alone, with this nice little chipper tune in the background. Turning the lights off, however, gives the room a new look, and similarly, the soundtrack gets a new nighttime music box variant. Oh, that's not right. There's a 1 out of 64 chance that every time we turn the light back on, that instead of Puniko, we're instead greeted by Yuboa, one of the more infamous characters in the game, with this loud blaring track overlaying the once chipper environment. Their track is filled with malice, and upon interacting with Yuboa, we're taken to Yuboa's trap, an area in the White Desert constantly looping as we wade through this white liquid, once again slowing our speed. Behind us is what is known as the Bloody Touching Monster, and Yuboa will watch on from where we first spawned in with this odd new expression. The only way out is to pinch ourselves awake. Yuboa is a strange character that can be interpreted in a few different ways. 1, this is just Puniko's true form. Having Puniko's sprite be replaced by Yuboa's makes some believe that they are the same character but in different appearances, especially since this doesn't happen if you kill Puniko with the knife before the event occurs. 2, similar to the previous interpretation, Yuboa's trap exists as Puniko getting mad at Madotsuki, perceiving us turning the lights on and off constantly as a prank, and becoming Yuboa to get back at us out of revenge. And finally, the one that I personally believe, Yuboa could be a representation of Madotsuki's isolation. Having Yuboa appear in this location indoors, isolated in the middle of an ocean, and subsequently trapping Madotsuki in is exactly what we see at the start of the game. Being unable to go outside while in the real world, and now even here, in what would be classed as Madotsuki's safe space, quote-unquote, from the outside world. Her social isolation is still tormenting her, trapping her, even choosing to show up at the only moment we meet another person that would be classed as normal. But let's move on. Mural World is another large empty space, this time being occupied by these blue and yellow murals, bringing in those same artistic inspirations from before, and scattered around are these little patches of grass. The world's track has this very synthetic vibe to it, and while there isn't much to talk about with this location, there's still a small thing of note here. That being that both the long hair effect and the blonde hair effect can be found here by interacting with these 2 mouth monsters that you can find walking about. They don't really do anything though, and are just kind of appearance changes. The way out of here is to just find a manhole that will lead us into the sewers, and I gotta say that out of all of the worlds, Mural World is just kind of lacking. There isn't much here to talk about, and although we do get 2 different effects here, they don't really do anything for us. And I feel like it could have either been so much more, or could have been replaced by another world. The sewers is a series of dingy and dark tunnels arranged like, well, the sewer system. The grim environment is a pretty good contrast to the colourful Mural World, and even shares a contrast of actually having quite a lot going on here. Starting with when first entering this place, we can go off to the right and find our path to be blocked by this inconveniently placed pain blob? There's no way of moving it out of our way, and even stabbing it will only cause this pained expression to appear, so we're forced to travel off to the left instead. The track that plays in the area is just a slowed down version of Denswood A's track, however in this new slowed down version, it managed to make it sound far more ominous. After entering a tunnel, we're able to find the city in the sewers, where a couple paler versions of the Perori can be found walking around in the water. Since they're in the water, we can't actually interact with them, and they just kind of wait about. We can then enter the sewage processing plant, an area that when traveling to the leftmost part of it, we can find a Noparabu effect. Noparabu? Nopirabu? I'm gonna go with Noparabu, from the Noparabu ghost in the area. It has no practical use, but at least it's more interesting than Madotsuki deciding she wants to bleach her hair today. In this leftmost section, we may also come across this submarine fish, with its eyes sticking out of the water. Other times, it can instead be replaced by another Perori. Traveling up another tunnel, we can interact with certain parts of the walls to show us the sewer drawings, a set of 9 different images that can be found upon each individual hole. It's theorized that Madotsuki may have drawn these herself at some point due to their crude appearance, and may even have gone through some kind of art therapy. We can also find this alley demon whilst passing by, however we can't actually interact with it since it's on the other side of the path that we can't get to. At the end of these tunnels, we can come across Big Red, a giant red head that after walking inside of will close and send us to Windmill World, a decently big looping area with a pretty ominous track. While it is just the sound of fans turning, the deep grumbling bass is still pretty imposing given the circumstances and the look of the environment being this dark void with a parallax background resembling that of a human heart. Here we can only find a few windmills, a couple of hedges that will lead back to Block World, the Cube Guru who will only spin his head when interacted with, and finally a fisherman who will send us to the docks, or at least just a small part of it as we can't access the whole thing yet. Much like with Dense World B, I'll be coming back to the other path later. Here we can find a creature called a dropfish swimming around in the water, a small little drooling fish which I actually think is kinda cute and is one of my favorite entities in the game. And a vending machine next to a staircase leading down into the ground that will send us back to the sewers. These vending machines can be bought from if you have enough yen, which you'll normally get from just killing other entities. And this one in particular will cost 150 yen, being the most expensive in the game. However, these drinks will increase Modotsuki's health by either 1 or 2 HP by chance. Like stated, I'll get to the other half of the docks later on, but for now we can head back to the Nexus. Graffiti World is one of the more colorful locations that we'll be seeing on our journey. It's another large looping area, however the visuals include a large variety of colorful flashing objects, and all of it definitely encapsulates the look of graffiti and its vast differences of art styles. Each tile makes its own unique noise when stepped on, however the actual background track is one that is shared with both Hell and Mini Hell, being this deep background humming ambience that deeply contrasts the colorful and bright visuals we'll be seeing here. As well as this, if we were to zoom out and look at the entire map as a whole, we can see that it is in the shape of a figure very similar to the Aztec rave monkey, alongside this anglerfish looking creature. The parallax background represents this strange amoeba looking thing, and the whole world is just kind of straining on the eyes. In this area, we can find the bicycle effect by traveling either directly east or west of the door we enter from. With this effect, we can ride a bike and go double our normal speed. This effect is really useful in getting through water sections or to escape from the lunatic Turnigan. Going to the southeast of the world, we can find an elevator and this will take us down to the mall, an area connected to the Staircase of Hands, and therefore I'll be saving that for later. Apart from that though, there isn't much else to see here, so it's already time to head back to the Nexus. Eyeball World is definitely one of the more disturbing looking places that we'll be seeing today. It's another dark void, except this time it's populated by eyeballs and other gory viscera. Severed legs can be found hobbling about the area, and arms grasp for something that isn't there. An unnerving synth highlights the whole area, and this ominous tone that just makes the whole world even freakier to be in. One of the good things about this world, however, is that we're able to pick up the metamod effect. Our head shifts into a hand with an eye in the palm, and it allows us to teleport back to the Nexus at any time. An effect which can be very useful for time saving, as we no longer have to go and wake up every single time that we get trapped, or just want to go explore elsewhere. A lot of the entities here can be interacted with, having various effects that occur either by us having the knife out or from us actively stabbing them. Some even giving us money, much like with Organoid. We can also come across these entities titled as Pier Monsters, having both a purple and white variant. They look pretty freaky and they kind of resemble entities like Euboa and the Alley Demon. There's also these bloodied up variants which only add to how weird they look. They cannot be interacted with. While wandering about, we may come across this bright blue severed head, and upon entering it, we can be sent to the Footprint Path, a dark passageway littered by Henkai Shita, large cyclops creatures that come in a variety of different colors. They have mouths in their stomach, and apart from the one that will send you to this footpath from hell, they don't have any kind of interaction and are kinda just there as decorations. At the end of this path, we can find a different group of characters known as... to take a fucking moment. In my script, I wrote it as, I wrote as ass, so it says ass gopas. At the end of this path, we can find a different group of characters known as gopas. Or gopas, whatever. Which, like the entities from before, have varying different colors, however, this time if we interact with the button of their color, the gopa will actually open their mouth, spraying blood out of it. It's possible that this button, quote-unquote, could actually be a part of the gopa's body. They're very similar looking to Onsen-san, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were somehow related. Once again, both paths reuse tracks from other parts of the game, with Path A using the track from Mural World and Path B using a slowed down version of Puddle World. This path connects us to Hell through another Nenrikido. However, I'll be coming back to that. And for now, let's move on to the next world. Coming into Kandle World, we are surrounded by a location very similar to the Dark World, but this time it's littered by candles varying in different heights. The parallax background gives the world this little wavy grey pattern, and the soundtrack is, well, I don't really know how to describe it, it's just kind of strange. The effect for this location I'm just going to refer to as the dwarf effect, since that is the title of the entity that we get the effect from, and also because the actual name of the effect is now considered a slur by some, and I don't want to risk the angry rage of Twitter finding me. And also because it's really not that fucking hard to just not call a group of people something that they don't like being called. It costs nothing to be a hater, and yet it also costs nothing to be a decent human being. We can gain the dwarf effect by catching up to the dwarf and interacting with him. While he runs around, he produces a sound effect that makes it a lot easier to track him down where he is. With this effect, we can of course become a lot smaller than Medotsky's usual size, meaning that we can get through into smaller spaces that we wouldn't normally be able to get to. There's actually a shortcut in the sewers for this effect, meaning that we don't have to go through Mural World. We're also able to initiate mitosis and form another small Medotsky to up to 7 different Medotskys at the same time. And alternatively, we can also get rid of these clones. There's also a Turnigan that has clearly been practicing for some big race, as once turned lunatic, she goes at 8 times Medotsky's speed, meaning that there is absolutely no way of outrunning her. While here, we can also find another one of the 5 beds that will send you to the Stairway of Hands, and in the middle, vaguely the middle of the map, we can find a group of walking candles who, like their name states, are a group of candle-like figures that walk around in the middle of the world. And finally, in order to leave the world, we simply find this pinky-purple triangle and enter it in order to be sent to a location titled the Checkered Tile Path. Much like with the footpath, this area just serves as a connecting point to Hell. And like the name implies, it's a landscape covered in checkered tile paths, surrounded by coniferous trees and a purple ripple background. The area splits into a few different paths, all leading to this one Nenrikido that'll send us to Hell. However, the whole place is guarded by this one lunatic Turnigan that we need to avoid, or else we'll get sent to this one isolated area in the docks. We can't get out of here without either waking up or returning to the Nexus. The music for the area reminds me a lot of A Strange Carnival, being alongside Snow World for my favorite track in the whole game. I just really like the simple organ tune that it has. We can also access this location from Lamp World, however we'll be getting back to that soon. Getting into our last 3 doors, we enter Shieldfolk World, an area very similar to Graffiti World for its bright visuals. However, it gets its name from the entities that inhabit it. They resemble these fluorescent creatures holding shields of various colors and designs. They stand in place and cannot be interacted with. Even more similarly to Graffiti World, we can find even more of those tiles on the ground, with them having their own unique noises when stepped on. A pair of figures very similar to the Rave Monkey can also be found in the background. The track is another calming one with the sound of a xylophone being played. The area just seems very funky, and it's also where we can pick up the cat effect. If we interact with the Nekoin, a play on words of Neko and coin, we are given the cat effect, where Medotsky will grow a pair of cat ears and a tail. The effect can come in very useful as it draws certain NPCs closer to Medotsky, allowing paths to be cleared up faster, or for certain hiding NPCs to be drawn over. By pressing the 1 key, we'll also get this small animation. Medotsky also has her eyes open in this form, and while some speculate that these red eyes may be Medotsky's actual eye color, I personally believe that this is just this way due to the cat effect itself. However, apart from this, there isn't much to see here, and we can carry on through this gate in order to enter a location titled the Static Maze, and much like the name, goodbye bitrate. After completing the maze, we're able to go up a ladder and enter the Famicom World House, or FC House for short. There's another area titled Static Tunnel that does basically the same thing, connecting the wilderness to FC World A, however, I'll be talking about all of the FC stuff soon, so for now, on to the next world. I know I've been going through these worlds pretty fast, but believe me, the ones that I'm leaving to the end are a lot longer to talk about. Neon World is another bright one, sharing appearances to both Graffiti World and Shieldfolk World. However, now times that by 10 and take a walk through the Las Vegas Strip. The whole world is comprised of these neon passages and empty open spaces, meaning that it's extremely easy to get lost here, while this oddly calming track plays in complete contrast to the anarchy of colors that's being spewed onto the screen. The entire place is this massive labyrinth of colors, complete with a large variety of different statues, floor patterns, and entities. The neon creatures are a group of entities all classified under one name due to how many of them there are, and in total in the Neon World there's about 137 entities inside of it. And they all wander around flashing in their own varieties of colors. When interacted with, they'll make their own arrangement of noises. Unlike a large amount of worlds here that strive for that feeling of loneliness and isolation, Neon World is completely meant to be the opposite, being the absolute epitome of social overload, with everywhere being filled to the brim with entities. One entity of note, however, is the Neon Parrot, an entity that upon interacting with will give us the neon effect, which will make Midotsky begin glowing like a neon light. And while it may have no practical use, we can choose to toggle between many different bright colors on our screen with this effect. In order to get out of here, we simply need to travel south from our starting room and west 2 times, where we'll find this hole in the wall leading us to the neon tile path, an area very similar to the checkered tile path, however this time with a more saturated palette. This area is used a lot like the others in the way of connecting the Neon World to Hell, and much like with the checkered tile path and the footpath, by interacting with an Enriquido at the end of the path. The area uses a slowed down version of Snow World's theme, and it's just a nice looking area. But before we get into talking about Hell and the other areas, we still have one more door to go through. Number World. Our last world out of the original 12 worlds, but funnily enough, the first world that I went into. And when your first impression of a game is... you know it's gonna be a good one. The area has a maze-esque appearance with these zipper entities covering the walls called zipper tiles. Differing numbers litter the floor that can range from 0 to, I'm absolutely not gonna be able to say this in words, 236-800-954-213-315-784. Due to the parallax background being the map itself, it implies that the area is a lot bigger than what is accessible to us, giving off this feeling of slight megalophobia since the area could potentially be far bigger than what we first think. The music track for the location is one of the more ominous ones in the game, with these droning chimes playing throughout, with its echoing effect only furthering the idea of how big this place could actually be. There's no effects to be found here, however there are still a few notable locations containing effects. There's a character here known as Steve Leaf Carrera, who will slowly swim along the bottom of this river if we travel to the south of the world. He won't appear for a long time though, so it's suggested to either use the knife or the cat effect to get him to show up faster. He's also referred to as Two Fishes in his Japanese title and is therefore speculated to possibly be a reference to the star sign Pisces, which is represented as two fishes. When under the stoplight effect, he will fold up. We can also find these entities referred to as wheelies, all of which having a different appearance under the stoplight and cat effect. For specific locations, we can also find this room full of beds, one of which may teleport you to the Staircase of Hands.
But I'll never tell which one.
There's also a sane Turnigan here, however if you stab her, she'll send you to one of 2 of these enclosed rooms, being able to start the Ah effect. Yes, you heard me, the Ah effect. In the middle of the room, there will either be one tile of the hiragana character for A or an I. Stepping on either one of them will cause the screen to be filled with that tile, and from that point on, you just figure out how to get out, normally by waking up or going back to the Nexus. This is implied that it could be Midotsky's manifested feeling of being watched and panic. We can also enter mini-hell by stabbing the same Turnigan and entering the third closet from the left in the bedroom. And in the same room, we can find a zipper tile bleeding out. Walking into the blood will send us to Guillotine World, with there being a chance to either be sent to the bigger or smaller version of the world separately. Guillotine World is an endlessly looping world colored in purple and scattered with closets and lunatic Turnigan. A small guillotine sits in the middle and, if interacted with, will give us the severed head effect, which, just makes Mudatsuki into a severed head. Not really any kind of practical use here. To get back, we just need to... Oh no! In each of these closets, there's a chance for a closet creature to taunt your efforts of trying to leave, which, combined with the current state of running from Turinigan and a sped up version of Yuboa's track, makes the area very frantic as you try to find the closet that will bring you back to Number World before you're caught. Coming back to Number World, we can find this door being blocked by a wheelie, and after getting it out of the way, either by the knife or cat effect, we're able to enter what is called the Stabbing Room. A room filled to the brim with wheelies, and using the same method as before, we can either wait patiently or plow our way through the crowd in order to find a mask at the bottom of the room. There's just this strange looking face model. There isn't anything else to find here. This whole room is just for nothing. We killed all of those entities for nothing. By these binary numbers of 1 and 0, we can find a door leading us to Lamp World, an area very similar to the Dark World and Kandle World, except now covered in lamps, and the only notable NPCs here are the walking lamp that we can get the lamp effect from, which we can use to light up darker areas of the game. There is also this smaller lamp that will send us back to this enclosed area of the checkered tile path that allows us to find Closet Mudatsuki, usually having to use some kind of effect like the dwarf effect or the severed head effect in order to see her fully. This world used to also be a world in the Nexus, but was changed for whatever reasons. We can return to Number World in the same place that we entered from. And finally, before we get back to those deeper locations, there is a chance once falling asleep that this zipper tile will have an angry face on it instead of the usual expression. After being stabbed, a doorway opens and we're able to enter the stairway. Not the stairway of hands, just the stairway. Entering it, we can find QQ-kun. QQ-kun? QQ-kun? Either way, it's a tall worm-like creature bearing a smile. However, it's uncertain whether it's actually friendly, seeing as we had to stab another entity in order to find it here. Q will not interact with us in any way and will consistently continue to rub the banister of the staircase unless the traffic light effect is used. This area could possibly be connected to the Nexus in some way, since it shares the door to Mudatsuki's bedroom and the background is very similar to the Nexus itself. Q's name can be connected to the Japanese onomatopoeia for a rubbing noise, which has its connotations given the fact that we have to enter a zipper in order to get to this location, and a lot like the Floyags has a pretty phallic design, bringing back in that theory with the bathrooms. Q can also mean 9, which could shine a different light on the character wanting to try and wake us up instead of being a malicious character, simply acting intentionally creepy in order to get us to press the 9 key and wake up. Especially with what happens when we continue. We're forced awake by this event, forced out of our own safe space by a nightmare. And now, before I get into the ending of the game and some of the theories that the fandom has, let's quickly go over the locations that I skipped since we still have some more effects to grab. Starting off with the White Desert is accessible from a variety of different locations such as Block World, the Dense Woods, the Pink Sea, and the FC Dungeon, and is a large area split up into multiple zones classed as White Desert A and B. The location resembles that of a desert, yet the color palette consists of black and white and red. The area is the second largest place in the game and funnily enough does not contain any effects at all. However, it does contain a lot of really important events. The soundtrack is empty, consisting of a short shuffling noise and a bell chime, making the area seem even more vast and empty than it already is. Around the area you can find multiple strange walls and protrusions of cacti blocking our path. And coming out of the Block World entrance, we can find this massive tooth-like structure that we can also use to head back to Block World at any time. Speaking of any time, every half second, there's a 1 in 3,600 chance of a Takofusen event occurring. Takofusen? Either one of those. I probably fucking pronounced a million things wrong in this video, it's whatever. In this event, Takofusen, also known as the flying monochrome thing, will float across the screen. It can be interacted with and doesn't respond to any effects. It's possibly theorized that this entity is a representation of a birth defect titled Trap Sequence, standing for Twin Reversal Arterial Perfusion, where in a pair of identical twins, one may become heavily deformed, and only the lower half of the body, or at most up until the torso, will be formed. This occurs in every 1 in 35,000 pairs of twins and is incredibly rare to occur. This can connect to a lot of the White Desert as the deformity only occurs in identical twins, also known as monochorionic twins. The term mono is used pretty heavily throughout the area, and it's been theorized that Medotsky may be a surviving twin of this effect, with a lot of the things that we see in Dream World being manifestations of Medotsky's guilt. Multiple characters such as Minoko and Mino share similarities to Medotsky, and there are multiple events and characters correlating to some kind of traffic accident that we'll be seeing. However, I'll get back to this later on. Nearby the Block World entrance we can find an eye box. Stabbing it has a 1 in 30 chance of sending us to this separate area surrounded by eye people, and in order to get back we just repeat the same action. Minoko is a character that can be found inside of this tunnel, however we can only enter and exit from the same side as Minoko will be blocking the other side. If we use the stoplight effect in here, then she'll go through a transformation and grow extra arms. After this we can interact with her to play this small effect. This is one of those effects leading into that traffic accident theory, with the use of the stoplight effect making Monoko look heavily deformed. It gives the implication that something may have happened revolving a stoplight to make something horrible like this occur. It still has a really good music track though. Traveling around, we can find a very similar tunnel housing an entity titled Dave Spectre. There's 2 of these guys in the White Desert and they just kind of hobble about in the place. If we kill this one in the tunnel, however, we can now enter the tunnel, and from the west entrance will allow us into Mino's area. And upon interacting with her, we begin her event where she gets a little too close for comfort. After this, she'll teleport away to another section of the map. Going in through the east, however, brings us to this section, with large limbs coming out of the ground. There is also a variety of trees, buildings, fire, and a specific house that will lead us to the Severed Heads in the Sky event, at the end of the path. Here we can see 2 different severed heads, one of a man and one of a woman, who will float away the moment we exit the building. Once more, these heads further the theory of the accident, since it's speculated that these heads might represent Medotsky's parents and how they may have died in some kind of traumatic accident. To get to White Desert B, we must go through FC World, which I'll be talking about in a moment. In this world, we can exit into the Underground Lagoon, one of the more prevalent areas of the game for its art style, having this very cartoony look to it. After passing through, we can find a stairway that leads us out into the White Desert again, now outside of that ring of mountains, encasing us into the area with the thing with the quivering jaw and Rory Straw. However, even with this area being one of the hardest to get to since you have to go through multiple mazes, there's nothing to find here. And one of the last things of note before we move on is that it's theorized that the whole area could just be a manifestation of Medotsky's drawings, much like with the drawings in the sewers due to their crude appearance. Moving on to the Staircase of Hands, the Staircase of Hands can be teleported to in a 1 in 5 chance of 5 beds spread around the world. We wake up on this staircase surrounded by long wavy hands, and once at the bottom we're able to enter the underground world, a constant rumbling ambience accompanying it. In this first room we can either choose to enter the elevator or continue left and find a raging fire. Using the umbrella or Yuki-Onna effect, however, will extinguish the fire and allow us to enter, which reveals a short passageway and one final mouth creature which gives us poop hair. Really? Poop hair? That's where we're at now? Continuing down this path, we can enter a spaceship. a small futuristic area featuring the character Sekka Masada Sensei, probably one of the most well-known characters from the game besides Yuboa, and he'll be sat playing the piano in the main room of the ship. He can be interacted with and will make a small set of noises. We can also interact with the piano itself and make the ship change directions with the cat effect. And if Masada is moved, we can actually play the note that he was blocking, which turns out to be a little bit off tune to the rest of the notes. Once we enter the main room of the ship, we cannot return to the underground world and instead must sleep in this bed to trigger the ship crashing event, where alarms will start blaring and will eventually crash onto Mars. During this sequence, Masada's tone will get more panicked and will become deeper and sadder after the crash. And it could also have been some kind of implication of an unfortunate traffic event. After entering Mars, we can climb a small mountain before entering the Martian underground using the dwarf effect to get inside. Inside, we can find a small stairway leading to Mars-san, a Martian which is seemingly distraught about the broken machinery next to it as a sad tune plays. This area is very short, but it leads more into that accident theory from before. Coming back to the underground area, we can now enter the elevator and come across 2 escalators. Taking the second one first, we arrive at the roof of the mall, a small area containing a few ventilation boxes and a black cat which has a chance to spawn in a variety of different locations on the roof. Using the witch effect, which we'll get soon, and choosing to walk off of the roof will begin the witch's flight event, where we can control Madotsuki's flight in the air. Pressing space will allow us to get back on the roof, however accidentally pressing 1... The event's pretty funny, I like it. Going down the first escalator instead will lead us down into the mall itself, a maze-like section with blue walls populated by mall shoppers who will make different noises and animations if we interact with them. Although they seem to be pretty malicious and are kind of just like a leave me the fuck alone, I'm shopping. There are 2 doorways to look for here, the first of which being the southwest, where we can find what seems to be some kind of reception desk with a Toranagan standing behind it. She gives us the option to change our menu type to this bright red counterpart similar to the Natsu game style. And next to her we can find an entity called E-Man, who is allergic to cats. In the next room we can find O-Man next to a flute, which we can pick up to gain the flute effect, which allows us to play a small variety of little chimes. In the southeast, however, we can find another room titled as Takoda-kun's room, featuring a chair, poster, and bubbling red liquid pool. Takuda-kun can also be found here and can be tipped over if interacted with, causing the same bubbling red liquid to pour out of him. We can also continue into the next area by traveling up the second escalator and entering this manhole, which will lead us back to the B section of the dense woods, this time on the path titled as Frog Path, since there is also a second frog here, which if you didn't already have it, you could gain the frog effect from this frog too. And interacting with the jellyfish at the end of the path, we're taken to the teleport maze, an area reminiscent of the block world, but now all the blocks are floating about, and we must step on different tiles to get teleported throughout the area. While here, we can also encounter 2 NPCs known as Warpo and Loople, who dance to the beat of the area. And in order to get out of here, we need to either look up a map or trial and error until we can find this blue tile, that'll send us out of the FC box in the wilderness, leading us into our next section. Re-entering this box will send us to FC World A through a static tunnel. In this world, all of the graphics are simplified like an old Famicom console. In the area, we can find many patches of water, volcano, and lizard men who speak in numbered tongues. The world itself is shaped like a giant island, and everything, even down to the music track, has been transformed to fit this older style. Our only way to travel is into the FC ruins, and subsequently following these stairs down into the FC dungeon. Another series of rooms in a maze-like pattern that is now drenched in darkness, requiring the lamp effect in order to light up the rooms. There are 2 lizard men down here, one of which has a more deformed face, possibly referring back to that twin stuff I was talking about earlier. The walls are different on each layer, with the top having these red puking faces and the bottom having these purple smiling faces. And one of the dead-ended rooms has the chance to cause the glitch event to occur, where when interacting with the west wall, in this same location, we can find a room leading back to the White Desert's underground lagoon, taking note that the room itself is also monochromatic. The area doesn't have that much to talk about and is mainly just an area used to connect more locations to the White Desert. However, coming to the B section of FC World by talking to a randomly selected Perori in the Barak settlement, however, can lead us to a familiar looking environment. We can return to a separate part of the FC ruins, and by traveling through these stairs we can visit a southeast corner to gain the Boyo Boyo effect, where Medotsky becomes more squishy and wobbles around as she walks, by talking to the Boyo Boyo, which is this strange little blue blobby creature. To the north of this area, we can also find the FC pyramids, where there is a 1 in 8 chance of the FC demon appearing, who will give you the demon effect upon being interacted with. At least, after being teleported into the demon room of the FC house. With the effect, Medotsky's skin will turn red and she'll grow horns, and now if it's raining, we can summon thunder and lightning. From this demon room, we can go explore the rest of the house by entering through the basement. If we get back up to the surface, we can find a field of trees surrounding the house. This is also where we would be put if we went through the static maze. A lot of the house and basement's interior is set up like a maze, and a lot of the doors are just pointless doors that send Medotsky to other sections of the basement. However, a few notable rooms are this goblin room filled with goblin NPCs and a new castle theme, the demon room that we came from filled with pyramids and surrounded with these NPCs known as Kanoko-san. These NPCs can come in a few different colors, however apart from this, there's nothing left to see here. And it's finally time to enter the last section of the game. Hell itself. Hell is a section of the game that is accessed from many different parts of the worlds, either by getting caught by a Turnigan or by interacting with the Nenrikidos. And it's safe to say that if you found a dead end, there's probably a path to hell there. The red environment heavily contrasts the void background being the only main color that we'll see here, apart from a lunatic Turnigan and one of those Henkai Cheetahs from before, which this one will actually send you back to the footpath if you stab it a bunch of times. The entire place is shaped like an utter maze, and the droning ambience just makes it a very unpleasant place to be in. I mean, it's hell, what did you expect? However, while it may be maze-like, it's also a good way to travel fast throughout the game's many locations once you know how to access them. You can also find a vending machine here that, much like the one at the docks, will give you a drink when used, which will increase your health. Many areas of Hell will repeat in pattern, and since the whole area looks the same, it's very easy to get lost here as there's no kind of landmarks. Hell can be connected to the checkered path, the footprint path, the face carpet plaza, and the neon tile path, the dense woods, and finally the docks. I said a fucking extra "and" in there, I'm not redoing that take. And the docks is where we're going to be headed, as we can now access an area that we previously couldn't get to, and it's also an area only accessible through Hell. In this separate section of the docks, we can find a large entity known as Mizume, a Perori who will take us back to the outside of the barrack settlement, and a guy named Strober, who looks kind of like a skinny stick man, and upon interacting with him... Oh well, that's just fucking rude. The effect has no practical use and just gives Medotsky a rounder appearance. But finally, through another exit from Hell, we're able to find the last 3 of our paths in the dense woods. That being the dark woods, where multiple ICs can be found shown in the trees, watching us as we pass our way through to a train car, and upon entering, we're greeted with a few of our passengers on the journey with us. The passengers on the train will change depending on which side we get on the train at, but we're now on the other side of the route, and our final location, Witch's Island. On Witch's Island, we can find a bunch of Noparabu witches, which are just wandering about and won't react to much apart from the cat effect, where... they'll grow a hole where their face should be. And as we pass over the bridge to get to the island itself, we can see a few strange structures and characters begin to appear in the water before we arrive on the other side. While here, we're able to get the witch effect by interacting with the Kimajo, an entity looking similar to a dead tree. With the effect, Midotsky will gain a witch-like appearance and can hover off the ground on a broom. There's also a small chance for a character titled Tesei's Kid to appear here, however it cannot be interacted with. And then finally, like said before, we can stab the Turnigan in the Number World Belt Room to enter Mini-Hell. Like the name states, it's just a smaller version of Hell that acts more like a crossroads with Midotsky's ghost in the center. She always faces the player and can be drawn with the cat effect, however her main importance is just the implications that she brings. Midotsky possibly believing that either she belongs in Hell or thinks that it's where she's gonna go when she dies. But that's it. That's all of the locations in Yume Nikki. And now that we have all 24 effects, we can return to the Nexus one last time and drop off all of our effects before waking up. I guess that's the end. With nothing left to do in her dream world, Midotsky finally decides to take actions into her own hands. It's been theorized that this ending sequence is just another layer of the dream world due to the jellyfishes appearing and the sudden appearance of the stairs and the strange living situation that she's in. With no running water, food, or even a bathroom, it would make sense that this isn't exactly real. Even though I kind of believe that Midotsky's room is just a room in an apartment and there's gonna be multiple rooms that are separate for like the bathroom and the kitchen in it. There's also the implication that this ending is just symbolic for Midotsky's reawakening from her anxiety and sunken away identity, finally feeling the confidence of being able to leave into the outside world. However, there is the very real interpretation that what we just saw happen actually happened. And those jellyfish that we see in the credits are just monstrous interpretations of the real world people spectating what we just saw. Yume Nikki has a lot of interpretation to it, and a large part of it is just figuring out what any of it meant. With Kikiyama being such a mysterious figure, they haven't really given us any kind of confirmation for the game's story, with our only other official adaptations being the manga and the reimagining of the game, Yume Nikki Dream Diary. However, neither of these were worked on by Kikiyama themselves, and we can't really be fully sure that this is what the story originally intended. On a gameplay standard, Yume Nikki is heavily dependent on the player's enjoyment of exploration. The game is mainly just a walking simulator with a few effects that spice things up, and a large majority of them are just for appearances. I personally really enjoy the feeling of exploring and finding something that I didn't know was there before, and Yume Nikki really involved that type of enjoyment. On top of this, the highly debatable themes and topics the game includes means that there's still a lot of returnability as you try to figure out what the fuck all of that meant. One of the major theories that I've already mentioned is that at some point a terrible traffic accident occurred to Midotsky's family, resulting in either the loss of a twin sibling or her parents or both. Generally, there's a lot of themes of isolation, for example the Turnigan party that we can't be a part of due to the plants blocking our way, or the fact that a lot of NPCs in the game will just outright ignore Midotsky. Mafuriko wandering the voidless plain of Block World, and Paniko who lives alone in the Pink Sea. Alongside these themes of isolation, we can find Midotsky's feelings of anxiety in the form of feeling watched, the IC's eyeball world as a whole, and the A event. Midotsky also shows manifested feelings of not wanting to be touched or preferring to stay far away from others. with the Pteranodon sending her far away when caught, the multiple parts of the game depicting hands as these grasping figures, grabbing at anything that they come across. There's also a variety of different themes leaning into Madotsuki's body or various feelings of body dysmorphia. The fat effect, the theme of Madotsuki's gender identity, Madotsuki may even be strabismic, due to her constantly feeling to keep her eyes closed, and the multiple entities throughout the game which have this strabismic appearance, which can often be caused by either hereditary genes or through brain injury, leading us back to that traffic theory. I keep talking about it over and over again, but multiple parts of the game imply that some kind of traffic incident happened in Madotsuki's life. Shitai-san, the spaceship crash, and overall NPCs act very strangely to the stoplight effect. Especially Minoko, who gains a whole, deformed form whenever we use it. Someone or a group of people in Madotsuki's life, maybe even Madotsuki herself, has been in a traffic accident and may have led to why she is alone now. There is still a lot more to talk about here, and Yume Nikki is a heavily debatable game in terms of story. But if there's one thing that's certain, it's that it's a wonderfully crafted game with a community that surrounds it with some equally amazing games. And I heavily suggest you go and check out those games if you enjoy the original Yume Nikki. Even just aside from fan-made media, there is still a lot more in the Yume Nikki franchise that you can go and see. Titles like the 3D reimagining of the game, Yume Nikki Dream Diary, there's an official manga, and so much more. I'll be leaving a link in the description to the Yume Nikki wiki page where you can go and read up on more of the community's theories and play any of the many fan games made for the game. But for now, that'll be all from me. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I did making it. We're insanely close to that 10k mark, so if you haven't already, subscribe to not miss my next upload. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!
Ay, 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 ay.